Hi, welcome everyone, and I'm so glad that you're here for my online masterclass 5 Steps to Create High Impact E-Learning for Instructional Designers. Now, over the next hour, I'm going to walk you through how to move beyond simple building e-learning courses and start designing experiences. Experiences that deliver real results for your organization and open new doors in your career. Because let's be honest, maybe you've been a bit stuck lately. You've got technical skills, you put in hours, but recognition and career growth just don't match your effort. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, you're in the right place. Quick housekeeping before we dive in, and stay muted and please use the chat. Your input is what makes this session engaging. So we're recording and you'll get the replay afterwards. So let's get started. So by the end of this session, here's what you have in your toolkit. A clear framework to design for behavioral change and not only for information dumping. A simple way to turn every dry compliance topic into engaging learning journeys. Also practical techniques to make your training stick and actually show measurable results. And maybe most important, clarity on how to position yourself as a strategic partner in learning and not just a person who executes requests. So if you ever thought people complete my courses but nobody really changes, today we're gonna fix it. But before we continue, let me introduce myself quickly. I'm Mark Sperman, and my goal is to help instructional designers transform ClickNext courses into breakthrough e-learning so you can make the leap from course creator to learning strategist. I've been in this field for over 20 years, worked with hundreds of organizations in the Netherlands and abroad. And here's the thing. Early on, I was also, where most of our youth now today, technically skilled, passionate about learning, but sitting in my office wondering why nobody seemed to value the strategic side of what I did. So I know your frustration of watching colleagues in other departments climb your career ladder while your expertise goes unnoticed. So that's the reason I'm here, because I don't want you to get stuck in that place. Now, let's start with a quick poll to ground us. So, what percentage of people learn in corporate training do they actually apply on the job? Is that 10%, 20%, 30%, or more than 40%? The real answer, around 20%. One in five things learned in an average e-learning course actually get used in practice, which means 80% of our work, storyboards, interactions, endless revisions barely moves the needle in learning results. So, and here's what makes this even more urgent. AI tools like ChatGPT, Claude can already spit out e-learning outlines, assessments, and even interaction ideas in minutes. Now, this sounds really scary, but here's the good news. AI can build content, but it can't build transformation. So, and there's where we come in as instructional designers. The future belongs to instructional designers who think beyond the tool and focus on what really matters to business results. So let's make sure you can raise the 20% for your courses and get noticed in your organization. And this is my mission, helping instructional designers transform ClickNext courses into breakthrough e-learning so you can make the leap from course creator to learning strategist. And this session is especially for those who already know the tools and have instructional design knowledge, but still feel strategically stuck. Maybe you're often the only idea in your organization, or you work in a small team with no one who really truly sees your challenges, and maybe you're tired of being seen the person that who makes training pretty. If that's you, this session is exactly what you need. If you're a beginner hoping for templates or a silver bullet, this is probably not the right fit, because today is about strategy and not about shortcuts. AI is on the rise and e-learning industry is growing every year, and yet many instructional designers feel more stuck than ever. And why is this? Because leadership says they want engaging e-learning, but often they expect it built like a Rust PowerPoint delivered yesterday, and they want it measured by completions. Now, that tension between demand and recognition, that's the gap that we're going to bridge today. So here's the core problem. Too often we were seen as executors and not as partners. You've told great training on customer service, but no one connects it to real business problems like rising complaints or failing product lines. So you're delivering technically flawless courses, but lie awake wondering if anyone notices the impact of your course. Now, maybe you'll recognize yourself in these quotes on the slides. My courses are technically sound, but feel bland and boring. They want it faster, but they don't see why quality takes time. I'm the only one in the organization that truly understands instructional design here, and then watch others get promoted whilst I still be invisible. Now, there's a bridge that you've been missing, and a lot of us have missing it the last couple of years. Learning is not about transferring content, it's about transforming what people do on the job. So that means asking different questions, designing differently, and measuring differently. And most important, talking about your work differently with people who control budgets and promotions. And that's the shift that you're going to make from course creator to learning strategist. And that's what we are going to cover in 5 steps today. So we're looking here what my heart is of my approach, the high e-learning framework. This framework isn't something that I pulled off a textbook. It's the result of 20 years of hands-on experience, over 200 e-learning projects across industry, and I distilled this into what constantly works. So you see here a framework, and every phase in this framework represents the practices that have been proven to create real impact, and I've all brought it together in one simple structure. So for instance, in phase 1, we're focusing on strategy and alignment, and you shift from order taker to strategic partner. In phase 2, it's all about the learning experience design. And there you turn dry in content into meaningful learning experiences. In phase 3, it's about the learning interface, so the look and feel of your learning project. You design clean, intuitive screens that support your learning goals. In phase 4, the execute phase, you bring everything to life in storyline without getting lost in the tech. And as last, in the 5th phase, the evaluate and improve phase, you prove your impact with evidence that stakeholders can't ignore. In short, this framework takes you from strategy to recognition. It's not about just building e-learning courses, it's about building courses that matter and positioning yourself as a designer who makes a real difference and a business impact. Now, that's the setup. We've seen the problem. You see why AI makes the shift urgent, and we also see what opportunity lies in front of us. So now let's dive into the first step of the framework, phase 1, define, and let's see how to speak the language of business impact so leadership actually start listening. Now, this step is about learning to speak the language that leadership actually cares about. Because here's the reality. Right now, too many of us are seen as a cost center. Training takes too long, is expensive, and people don't always see the payoff. But once you start speaking in terms of impact and outcomes, the whole perception of training changes. Suddenly, you're not only the one who builds courses, but you become a strategic partner who gets a seat at the decision-making table, and you're involved earlier in the process. But here's the gap that's holding us back for years. Picture this, you walk into a meeting and proudly explain to your manager, hey, I built this storyline course. It uses advanced interactions and scenarios to prove knowledge retention. And what happens? Your manager glazes over to you and they respond with, okay, but how does it help hit our KPIs? And why does it take 6 weeks when we need results yesterday? Sounds familiar? Now, we speak in learning objectives, features, and design language, but leaderships or managers, they think in KPIs, revenue, time to market. And that disconnect is why many instructional designers never get invited to the strategic conversations. And to fix this, we need to become translators, turning learning science into business outcomes and uncover what really matters. And you can, for instance, ask the following questions at the start of a project. So, what specific business problems are we solving here in this project? What behaviors need to change from the people to solve these business problems? So how can we measure success at the end of the project? And what is stopping people from doing this already? Now, with these questions, and you can think of a lot more, you are gonna think more strategically about how to create your e-learning course. Now, let me show you a formula that changes everything. And I have an example. Here, there's a request, for instance, we need cybersecurity training. But that doesn't say anything. So here's a formula that you can use that is more specific. And the formula is a business goal translation formula. The formula is who will increase or decrease what by how much, by when, measured by a specific metric. I think this is vague, so let's see a real example. So instead of saying an IT department needs cybersecurity training, you say, hey, IT staff will reduce security incidents by 40% by Q4, correctly identifying and responding to threats as measured by the incident reports. Now, see the difference? Suddenly, you're not talking about learning for learner's sake, but you're tying it to real business results, and that matters to your leadership. And no, I understand your e-learning course isn't the only thing that can solve the whole business problem, but it can certainly contribute to solving the business problem. And here is something nobody tells you early in your career. Leadership don't care about completion rates and quiz results. Those numbers make sense to us, but in the boardroom or with your manager, they are meaningless. They want to know, did performance improve? Did we reduce errors? Did we save time? So instead of reporting 95% of all the employees completed this course, you can say customer complaints dropped by 30% after this training. Now, I hope you see how this feels different. And that's the kind of language that you noticed in your organization. And here's the payoff. Once you master this shift in language, everything changes. Because you stop waiting for orders to trickle down like build a course on X. Instead, you're in a room where performance challenges are first discussed. So you're a part of prevention and not reaction. And that's when you stop being an order taker and start being trusted as a real advisor. And that's when leadership and management starts looking at you not as the training person, but as a strategic partner where training and learning can help solve our business goals. And that's the transformation step one in the framework unlocks. Now, that's step one, learning to speak the language of the business. But of course, it's not just about what you say, it's also how do you design your e-learning course. So that brings us to step two, shifting from content-heavy training to behavior-focused learning. Because here's the trap most technically skilled instructional designers fall into. We build courses packed with information, but information doesn't equal transformation. If you want to deliver business impact, like we talked about in step one, you have to design for behaviors. What people actually do different on the job, that's the game changer. So think about the traditional way courses are built. The question we usually start with, what do learners need to know? And what does this lead to? Slide after slide of content, maybe some click to review sprinkled in, learners pass a quiz at the end, get a certificate, and then back on the job, nothing changes because they only have knowledge but no practical skills. And research shows lecture style content has around 5% retention rate. 5%. So no wonder why most leadership or managers think that training has a little impact. But we can flip the script. Instead of saying, hey, what do they need to know? We start with, hey, what do they need to do differently after taking this course? And this one shift changes your entire design process, and you can work backwards. Start with the business goal, identify the behaviors that will achieve it, design practice opportunities in your e-learning course for those behaviors, and only then add the minimum information that the learners need to support them for the practice opportunities. And we are mostly accustomed to get too much information that it's only noise. So, and then there's here the mind shift that changes everything, behavior first design. Because too often courses are built around content, pages of information with a quiz at the end. But what I earlier said, information doesn't change behavior, experience does. So when learners are put into realistic situations where they need to take decisions, solve problems, and see the consequences, that is when change happens. So instead of what they need to know, start asking what do they need to do differently. And that's how you design learning that actually sticks. And what can help for this is think in stories. Because you'll notice that even the driest topics can come to life with stories. Because it's not about dumping information, it's about putting the learner inside a journey. Instead of reading policies, they become, for instance, a detective solving a data breach. Instead of clicking through HR rules, they step into the shoes of a new manager dealing with real team conflicts and where they have to use the HR rules to solve the team conflicts. So stories create context, emotions, and relevance. They turn abstract rules into situations learners recognize, and that's why they stick. Now, let me give you an example where we proved this in practice. This is an interactive online multiplayer escape room built in Articulate Storyline that helps teams work with each other through effective listening. And this is an essential skill for any organization. Yeah, what we could have done was provide a lot of information about how to effectively listen in your organization. But in this online escape room, they have to really put it in practice to solve puzzles and to come to the safe and get the prize at the end. So you see here the first screen of the online escape room. You must step into the shoes of an elite team of specialists they are tasked with cracking a safe. Now, in this trailing online escape room, learners have to uncover the power of effective listening and practice these skills interactively. Because you see here a puzzle where one learner has to cross the room from the bottom to the top, and he doesn't see lasers, but there are lasers in the room. Another learner sees the lasers in the room, and they have to effectively communicate to each other and listen to each other and to make sure that the first learner goes to the room without being hit through the lasers. Now, the formula for engagement is simple. A relatable character in your course, realistic challenges, and meaningful choices. Because when learners see themselves in a story, they face challenges, they actually deal with and make decisions that shape the outcome. That is where real behavior change begins and when it happens. Now, We've seen now the formula for engagement, but e-learning still relies mostly on click and reveal, and this doesn't change its behavior. So in step 3, I show you how to go beyond that using interaction patterns that build confidence and drive real performance. So step 3 is where we move beyond click next and use interactions that actually change how people think and act. I'll show you 3 patterns that you can steal today, each one taken from real examples in my swipe file. They're simple to build, no hard JavaScript or that sort of stuff in Storyline. They're memorable for learners and impossible for stakeholders to ignore. So let's start with a pattern that trains the eye and judgment in a single screen. But before we go to, I'm curious, how many of you still use click and reveal interactions in your courses? So be honest, type yes or no in the chat. And when you type no, give your most used interactions in the chat. So cool, I see quite a few yes responses. That's very common because click and reveal interactions feel safe, but it rarely drives deeper thinking. But I also see a lot of variety of other interactions that you're using. And the key point here is click and reveal interactions aren't bad per se, but it's your main pattern, then you're limiting engagement. And in this step, it's all about moving beyond into strategies that really drive thinking and decision making. So let's retire the click to reveal clutch and instead of revealing info, make learners make decisions that matter. So your interface should invite judgment calls, not only mouse clicks. So when you treat interface design as a thinking tool, engagement stops being cosmetic and starts being cognitive. So we're designing for thinking. What patterns actually drive learning? Let's find out. So here is the first example. Drop learners into a really realistic scene and ask what's wrong here. And they can scan, click items, and they have to find how many items there are wrong in this warehouse and that are actually dangerous. I don't tell them upfront how many items there are dangerous. They have to find it out themselves. And if they think that they clicked all the items, then they click on the button, I think I improved everything. In that moment, they get feedback on the items. Now, why is this working? It trains the eye and also the why, because it's not just a rule. They have to uncover themselves and they get feedback that explains our consequences and also fixes. So now, where can you use this in your e-learning courses? You can use it, for instance, for safety checks, retail displays, something with hygiene, and even in cybersecurity. Now, once the learners can see problems, then we can help them organize decisions the way experts do. So here, learners drag items into the right place because they want to make sure food is stored in the right location in the fridge. So we don't want to throw away food. So think about fridge zones, chemicals into storage, documents into security levels. So why is this interaction working? Because it builds practical judgments through immediate contextual feedbacks. Where can you use it? You can use it in lab safety, 5S rules, lean, data qualification, or for instance, onboarding checklists. Now let's go to the third option. This is a predict, then reveal. Now, this is a slider. Most people don't know it, but this is actually accessible in Articulate Storyline. So it works for screen readers and that sort of stuff. And people have to guess here how many kilograms of food waste are thrown away per person per year on average. So we don't give them a simple multiple choice question, but we let them actively think about the answer. and then after that reveal the real number with a short explanation and an actionable next step. Now, why does this works? It creates safe cognitive dissonance because being wrong a little makes the correction memorable. Now, these interactions are just 3 interactions. These patterns land even better when your interface builds confidence, but there are lots more of these examples that I talk about in my online program. Because great interface design isn't about making things pretty, it's about making feel learners confident. So when the interface is intuitive, it reduces cognitive load so the people can focus on content instead of figuring out where to click. Clear navigation in your course removes friction, so learners move smoothly through the experience. And when every click gives meaningful feedback, it reinforces learning and builds momentum. So in other words, the interface itself becomes part of the learning experience, and it helps people feel capable and in control from start to finish. So in step 3, we designed interactions that build confidence. In step 4, it's time to bring all these things together and to life. So how are we going to build in storyline while keeping the learning experience intact? So we want to turn our strategic design into reality, but building isn't about only technical execution. It's also about maintaining integrity while making it work flawlessly. So therefore, I have my most important rule when building in storyline: I don't want to think. And maybe you think, why does Mark don't want to think in storyline? Then it goes wrong. Now, let me explain it. When I start in storyline, I don't want to think anymore about design decisions, content decisions, or that sort of stuff. All those decisions should have been made in all the earlier phases. This step 4 in the framework is about execution. The heavy thinking is done. It's approved by your manager or the client, and so you can focus completely on building the course. So now it's not just about bridging the design to life smoothly and consistently. And before we rush into opening storyline, here's the last step. What do you want to do before opening storyline and building your course? Hey, is the storyboard approved by your client and also the look and feel of your course? Do you have all assets available in the right format? And have you optimized media for load speed, but also accessibility? So have you thought about alt text, that sort of stuff? And plan for maintenance and updates. So use naming conventions in your e-learning course, in your storyline file, and also structure. So this saves a lot of time if a colleague of yours has to do some revisions in about 6 months or of a year. And now we can open Articulate Storyline. And the first things that you should do when you create a new project file are set your slide size, create a color theme, create a font theme, and design styles for accessibility. So if you've done it correct, you have made decisions about the slide size in one of the phases before phase 4. So we now know what the slide size should be and that it works on the devices where learners take your e-learning course. The same is for the theme colors. You have made decisions about theme colors, so you can put them in Articulate Storyline in a color theme. And the beauty of a color theme is that if you want to change some colors for whatever reason later on in your project, you can change it here in the color theme, and it changes throughout the whole course, so you don't have to do something manually slide by slide. Also, what you want to do is give a theme font where you create a heading font and a body font. So also if the font should change in your course for whatever reason, you can change it here and it will be changed throughout all your course. And the last step is to create headings. So these are the standard headings that are into Articulate Storyline. You can use it because screen readers can use these headings and read it, but you can adjust the look and feel of the headings. And if something adjusts in the look and feel, you can change it here in your heading section, and it will be applied throughout the whole of your course. So you want to make it adjustments as simple as possible and don't want to make adjustments slide by slide by slide. That's risky, takes long, and leaves room for errors. Now, when we've done this, the next step is to create master slides. Now, this is where you define your core look and feel of the course. So we are going to look which items are in place on all slides of a course. So for instance, a logo, navigation bar, footers. We place it on the master slide. It will do it once and it applies on every slide. Next, we create layouts for common screens, so as an introduction, scenario, quizzes, and then with that, we create page templates. And what we're doing with the page templates, we test the page templates thoroughly. Make sure all triggers fire correctly, feedback layers displays as expected, and nothing breaks. Because it's easier to make an adjustment on one place in your template than when you have copied your template, for instance, 20 times in your course and you have to do 20 adjustments. And next to this, once you've done this and tested it, build your course structure. So let's see it as the skeleton of your course. So we create chapters, even sections, and we create and we add the pages in it. So we add page templates in it in the way it is in the storyboard. We also add navigation that it works, so you can click from a chapter to a main menu, from the main menu to all the chapters. Make sure all the chapter variables are in the right place. So if you are on the end of chapter 1, that the completed sign is seen, or a word completed is seen in the main menu, or you have a check mark in the main menu. That is really important. Then before we are going to enter content, you're going to test the course structure. So if everything is okay, then we can enter content and assets. So this is the last step, enter content, because too many designers rush straight into content, but without structure, it collapses and you make a lot of errors. And I like to batch my content because then I don't have to switch through items. So what I do, I first input all the text in my e-learning course. When that is done, I do all the images, and when that is done, I do all the videos and the other assets. And so I can focus on one task and don't have to switch from task to task with the risk of forgetting something. Now, step 4 was about building your course, but once it's live, then the real test begins because, hey, does it work? So in step 5, we're going to focus on testing the course, measuring it, and improving it. So you can prove impact and also refine. So step 5 begins with testing. Before we are releasing our course, we do a full test from start to finish. Mostly first an internal test, where we don't just check if all the buttons work, but we look at learner's journey. Is the navigation intuitive? Does the flow make sense? Is the content accurate? Because in the phases before here, we made all decisions on paper, but sometimes in practice, when it's on your screen, you see that something what you thought of doesn't really work, and this is the moment to fix this. So if you did the internal test, then do an external test, for instance, with clients. So invite a small group of real learners and stakeholders to try the course and to test it. So watch how they interact, ask where they get stuck, and listen carefully to their feedback, and then refine and adjust the course. Because this is your last chance to make sure the course feels seamless and before it reaches a wider audience. Now, when your course is tested, it can be live, but you can build the most impactful learning course in the world, but as nobody sees results, it might well not exist. And too many instructional designers stay invisible because they can't demonstrate the impact of their work. So recognition doesn't come from effort, it comes from outcomes. And if you want your career to grow, you need to show leaders exactly how your work creates value for business. So here's the shift that we should make. Stop measuring activities and start measuring outcomes. So traditional metrics as completion rates, quiz scores, and smell sheets, they feel you have someone finished it, but no one changed it. It changed nobody, for no one in the e-learning. So strategic metrics tell a different story. For instance, fewer errors on the job, faster onboarding, improved sales, reduced complaints. These are the numbers managers and leadership understand. So they don't care about a 95 passed the quiz. They care about customer complaint went down with 30%. So if you want to take a seat at the strategy table, this is the language that you have to speak. Think about what we talked on in phase 1 of the framework. Now, when was the last time you shared a real business result from your training with a stakeholder? And then I don't mention completion rates, that sort of stuff. So type right recently, a while ago, or never. Now, thanks for sharing. And what you are seeing is that most of us are in the same boat. We build good courses, but if we can't show the real business impact, stakeholders won't see us as strategic partners. And that's exactly where phase 5 matters so much. It's not about just testing if a course works. It's also about providing outcomes that get you recognized. And that's how you move from invisible to indispensable. Create a strategic recognition system for yourself. Don't start with a simple portfolio. You want to create an impact portfolio. And an impact portfolio is a living document that showcases results your courses deliver. So don't only list the courses that you build or collect metrics that matter. So performance improvements, time saved, errors reduced, and revenue supported. Add before and after scenarios so people can clearly see the transformation that your course supported. So you can, for instance, include the testimonials from stakeholders that highlight outcomes and not only just satisfactions. And here's the key in your organization. Don't wait for your annual performance review, but present impact on courses, for instance, per quarter. So keep your values visible all year long. So where leadership or management consistently sees the difference that you make, they also recognize you as a strategic partner and not just as a course builder. Now, let's pause for a moment and look what we have now, because what I talked to you about in the last 30 minutes, it's not just about theory, but it's a complete framework that can shift you from course creator to learning strategist. Now, in this online masterclass, we tipped in for each strategy and picked one thing that is important, but in all the phases are multiple things that are important to create real impactful courses. But what you've learned right now is how to design for behavioral change, how to speak the language of business, how to build interactions that really stick, how to make even boring topics engaging, and how to make your value visible inside your organization. Now, most instructional designers never get this clarity, even after years of experience. So you already have this in hands right now and have a huge leap for all the instructional designers that are not in this masterclass. But here's the truth. What I talked about in this online masterclass was just the foundation. So knowing what to do and consistently implementing it are two different ways. And this is one thing to have the framework. It's another thing to apply it every day with dealing with unrealistic deadlines, skeptical managers and leadership, and being the only instructional designer in your organization. So, and that's where support, accountability, and community can make a difference. They turn knowledge into action and action into career-changing results. So here's where I want to connect the dots. So what I do is simple. I help instructional designers go from being stuck in an executor role, just handed content and told to make a course, to being recognized learning strategists who design e-learning experiences that change behavior and are getting noticed by stakeholders. I do this with the high impact e-learning framework. And this framework is now in an online program, a 12-week online program where I teach you this framework step by step, how to use it and implement it for every course. Now, this is a system that upgrades your skills, your confidence, and also the way leaders see you. So instead of feeling invisible, you start creating learning that sticks, proves its impact, and accelerates your career. Now, this is not for everyone. Um, it's for experienced IDs who are stuck in executing role, building technically fine courses, but they don't create real impact. You know your tools, but you think your work isn't moving your career because stakeholders see you still as the course builder. Now, I can help you in my online program with a proven five-phase framework, hands-on coaching, one-on-one calls, and ready-to-use tools. So in my online program, you don't get only true theory, you get templates, shortcuts, feedback applied to your real projects. So you finally get recognition for the value that you bring into your organization. Now, my online program kicks off October 21st in this year. But if you're ready to join, there is now a great bonus. You can grab an early bird discount of 30% if you sign up before September 29th. And to make sure everyone gets the right amount of attention and guidance in my online program, I'm keeping the group small, so a maximum of 15 people. So that way you're not just another participant, but you're part of an engaging group where you get personal feedback and support. Now, I really appreciate you being here, spending the last 40 minutes with me and sticking with me until the end of this presentation. And it's amazing to share all this knowledge with you. So if you're curious about my online program and want to explore it further, just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn with the word strategy and we take it from there. So now we covered a lot today, and I love to open it up to you. Here's your chance to ask me anything about what I covered in this masterclass. Now, at the end, I have some final takeaways. Because if you take only one thing from today, let be this. You don't have to be stuck in executor role as instructional designer. You can design courses that actively change behavior, prove their impact, and earn recognition as a strategic partner. Now, my online program and framework we walk through can be your roadmap, and the program gives you support to make this real. So, what can you do next after this online masterclass? First, pick one of the techniques from today and try it in your current project. Start small, start right away, but keep building momentum. Second, begin working on your impact portfolio. Start collecting examples and metrics that prove your value, because that is where you get noticed. And finally, if you are curious about the online program and how it can help you, send me a DM on LinkedIn with the word strategy and we'll take it from there. Now, these 3 steps will keep your momentum going and make sure today isn't just inspiring, but it actually moves your career forward. And this is the first step, therefore. So thank you very much for being here today, for your attention, your questions, and your openness to think differently about our work as an instructional designer. So if you're not connected on LinkedIn, let's change it, because I share tips, frameworks, and inspiration multiple times a week. And finally, remember, it's not about building more courses, it's about building courses that matter. Courses that make a difference for learners, for organizations, and for your career. So I can't wait to see what you'll create in the future. I hope that you can share it with me on LinkedIn. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you soon in my next online masterclass.